What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Young Adult Podcast. My name's Connor. I'll be one of your hosts. Joining me today in the studio/office, we have Casey Mexico and Catherine Peterson.
You
Partlow.
wish. You wish. I'm forced to be here. Help me.
KP was a Young Adult resident. She's now hired on our creative team. And she works for us for one more week. So as part of her job description in the final week, we said she is a part of the freaking podcast.
Of literally 10 minutes
Legit against her will.
Very much against her will.
They put me in the corner so that I can't escape.
All right, KP, give us, in a minute or less, an interesting fact about you and a small little picture into the worst date you've ever been on.
Oh, no. Okay.
In a funny way.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's always funny. Haha. You can always laugh about it. Interesting. I love surfing, but I'm really bad at it. So like, people are like, that's so cool. I'm like, it's not if you saw. Like, you would think it's horrible if you saw it, but it's so fun. My worst date was I thought it was a date and it was supposed to be a date, but it like wasn't a date. So I didn't bring my wallet. I didn't have Apple Pay at the time. He's like, I'll pick you up.
And everything was supposed to be 50-50?
No, like he goes to pay for himself and then he like pays for himself, you know? And then I'm like, hey, I'm so sorry I didn't bring my wallet. He's like, oh, that's okay. And I had Venmoed him a few days before because he drove like a bunch of us and we all just chipped in for gas. He's like, oh, you pay me too much for gas. Like, I'll get this one. And I was like, okay.
Oh,
like,
man.
That's horrifying.
And I was like, so I'm not on a date. So it was really confusing.
That guy sounds like a loser. If you're listening to this,
he won't
shame.
be over.
Oh,
Shame.
man. That's so
Nice guy.
embarrassing.
Nice guy.
Guys, starting to get warm outside. What's like a quintessential summer activity for you? What is one thing that you do only in summer that is like summer is here, it has arrived?
I rollerblade around Sloan's Lake.
You do.
You weren't expecting it.
No, I've known this.
They can come join
it's
you.
so fitting.
Connor, I got a new bucket hat and it's missing the top.
Oh my gosh.
So technically it's just a visor around your whole
a
head.
360 visor.
Yes.
That's amazing.
And I put my hair out of it. Like, it sounds so weird, but I like when my hair blows in the wind while I rollerblade.
That's something like really deep for you.
Yeah, and then I put my AirPods in and I usually listen to scores of movies that I like. And then everyone...
Oh, so this is like a thing.
Yes.
It's not just like I'm just grabbing my rollerblades and going to blade.
No,
is that what you...
Spiritual.
No, it's
going to
spiritual.
roll?
And then I go around Sloan's and it is the watering hole of Denver. The most diverse... Every demographic.
Wait, Sloan's?
Sloan's.
Oh, I was thinking Wash Park.
I don't like Wash because there's this really big hill in this Wash Park circle, and there's nothing more embarrassing than trying to rollerblade uphill.
I think there's a lot more embarrassing.
It's pretty embarrassing. Like you're just wide striding, making 1 inch at a time. So that's my summer activity, 10 miles around Sloan's. So I've run into a couple of young adults there, and it's always...
Interesting.
It's tough, probably for them to see me.
Rollerblading, KP. What's your quintessential summer has arrived activity or hobby?
I've deemed this boat summer.
Summer?
I don't have a boat.
Oh,
but it's gonna be boat summer.
Do you have access to a boat?
I have 2 friends, one in Georgia, one here, and they have boats. So I'm just like,
who's your friend here that has a boat?
I can't out her on this.
Wait, I want to be
talk
on the
offline.
boat.
Let's talk offline.
Are we friends with her?
Yeah. You know.
Oh, I mean, I guess I've got 2 friends that have boats here, but they never
let's all
take them
share
out.
Friends.
Type her name down right here.
Okay. Wait, this is good for you.
Okay, so boat summer without a boat.
Right.
Okay.
You can look at it.
All right.
Sorry, my friend, if you didn't want to.
I would say country music is my thing.
Yes, I want country music on the boat.
June and July, I listen to country music.
Yes.
That's
August,
it.
out.
Literally. I don't know why. I'm not a country person, but in the summer, it's fitting.
Seasonal.
I can't picture you in like a little cowboy hat. Like one of those little...
I don't buy a cowboy hat. I still wear the same clothes. I just
you in one.
listen to country music.
It like unlocks something.
Like a Sam Hunt or an old school country?
I like Sam Hunt. I really am big in Shabuzi right now, which I don't know if that counts or not, because he's kind of like R&B rapper meets country.
It counts.
I haven't really gotten into Post Malone stuff.
No.
I really like his Austin album.
Shabuzi.
It touches like a weird. This is gonna sound horrible, like a sad part of my life that I like haven't experienced yet, but I'm like projecting into the future. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like a nostalgia that's not there.
Yeah, I don't know. Like he raps / sings about stuff that I'm like, I maybe could relate to that. Maybe.
Sure, one day.
Kind of. If like, who knows?
That's so funny.
All right. Anyway, let's dive into today's topic. Today, we're going to kind of talk a little bit about leadership. We're going to talk specifically about the 3 deadly sins of leadership. This was an idea that was kind of birthed from an Instagram post that one of, I think, all of our mutual friends reposted. It was really, really good, really interesting and insightful. And I thought, wow, I think if we kind of take these ideas, contextualize them a little bit to this young adult season of life, it could really help a lot of young adults when it comes to growing and developing our leadership, our future leadership, and specifically looking at things to avoid. So today we're talking about the 3 deadly sins of leadership, and they are jealousy, insecurity, and pride. I think when we talk about leadership, we think about vision or charisma or the ability to rally a team, but so much of leadership comes down to character. And sometimes what's under the surface can quietly destroy everything positive that you're trying to build. And so we're going to kind of dig into each one, define each one, talk about maybe the root causes of them, how they show up and manifest in your leadership, in our leadership, how they could affect people around us, and then most importantly, how do we combat these things? How do we identify these things in our life so that we don't lead from a place of jealousy, insecurity, or pride? So let's dive in and define what these things mean. When we talk about jealousy, Casey, what are we talking about? I feel like I'm talking a lot.
All right, jealousy. We got a definition here. Fear or resentment when someone else has something you perceive you deserve or something you value.
Okay. Insecurity would be a sense of inadequacy that leads to a need for validation from others. And KP, how would you define pride?
How would I? Don't know, but how would this document? An inflated sense of self or superiority that refuses to acknowledge limits, flaws, or the contribution of others.
Okay, so we're starting off really positive and strong. Jealousy, insecurity, and pride. I feel like a lot of these kind of overlap with one another and differ a little bit from one another. So when we talk about jealousy, insecurity, and pride, I don't know, what pops out to you? Are they similar? How are they different?
Yeah, I think insecurity is like the bedrock of the other two.
Yeah.
I think the deflated ego needs to exude pride, needs to exude greatness because internally they don't feel greatness. And then the deflated ego also outsources and wants to be, is a victim, right? So it can't be their fault. It can't be something internal. And so we'll look everywhere else to either blame, like, oh, well, they got this. Well, that's because of this. Or, well, so I think you also, if you need to preserve your ego strength, you have to find problems outside of yourself. And so I think jealousy can be like, they got this thing, I want this thing, but then cutting down how or why. Or if you're jealous, finding like flaws about them that like, well, they might have this, but like they suck in this way.
Yeah.
So it's this external, it's like the external, both are external solutions to an internal issue and masking yourself from like what's really going on internally.
Absolutely.
Was that very convoluted?
No, I thought that was great.
Is, though. Like, it just all is.
Yeah. Like, I think they're so similar in so many different ways, but kind of like manifest themselves in different ways.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of it comes from similar root causes, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I remember I did a sermon series on the things holding you back, and I talked about insecurity, and then I talked about imposter syndrome, and really kind of, I think this was a summer or two ago, I did like a big study on Saul from the Bible. And I feel like obviously there's good things about Saul, but he is like the poster child of this. Mm-hmm. When you first see Saul, when Saul is first introduced, hit the orange button. No, I'm kidding. We don't even know what that one is.
That's the womp womp.
Oh,
I really know what it is.
When Saul is first introduced in the Bible, he is anointed king and he's hiding in luggage. He's like so insecure about this that he's hiding because he doesn't want to be recognized. So he finds, I guess, a pile of luggage and jumps into it and hides. He's super jealous. That insecurity then manifests into jealousy. Yeah. There's this little boy who's anointed king in a field. He calls on this boy, unbeknownst that he was the anointed one initially, to play music because he's tormented by it's called like an unclean spirit. I think a lot of times the actual translation is God's removal of his spirit from his like leadership. So essentially he's having these like panic attacks, anxiety attacks. David comes, plays music. He's so jealous for the talent in David, he tries to kill him. And then in pride, Saul, they're about to fight a battle, takes the Ark of the Covenant ahead of, is it Samuel? Yeah, I believe so. Samuel. Mm-hmm. KP, you're the Bible historian.
Yeah, for sure.
And then he like sacrifices a sacrifice that only a priest should make out of sort of haste, and then also like, well, I'm the king, I should be able to do this, and it ultimately leads to his downfall. So if you are looking for sort of like a Bible study on leadership gone wrong in like an internal way, that then manifests externally, Saul is such a picture of what could happen to us when jealousy, insecurity, and pride take root in our heart, and you just watch it play out in his life. And it's such a mirror, because you read it and you're like, well, yeah, that guy's a freaking jerk, but then you're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm insecure. I am jealous. I'm prideful. And so I mean, we say it a lot, the Bible is like a mirror. You read some of these stories and you're supposed to learn from these people's life because it reflects things into every like human condition that we wrestle with. So
I know. I feel like maturing in your faith is reading that story, or maybe not necessarily maturing, but I think the older I get, the more I see clearly my flaws in the mirror,
Yeah.
And I read that now and I'm like, oh gosh, like some things in Saul, I'm like, oh, for sure. Mm-hmm. I could find strings of that or little hints of that, or because I don't know if you fully ever eradicate these three, right? Like insecurity, jealousy, pride.
Yeah.
And so I could probably tell you like 4 things that you could do that would make me feel insecure, and I'm like, I hate that those are there,
Yeah.
I do think it's our job and our responsibility to contend with those and not put them on other people. Like we're responsible for our souls, like before God.
Yeah.
But I think too, like, I guess a thought as you were talking, Connor, came into my mind. I would be pissed too if I'm Saul, right? Like, because I think sometimes it's like, oh, well, you shouldn't be pissed. And we kind of try to solve the external like response instead of looking at like, well, how did your heart even get to a place where this could undo you the way that it undid him? Yeah. Because what's happened is, a kid who's not qualified, who has never been to battle. Like, I'm thinking of it here. It'd be like one of my youth students, they're like, Casey, sorry, they're taking over the church. Like, they're your boss. And I'd be like, oh, and they're like, God wants it. I'd be like, okay, this is going to be pretty hard for me.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, how did Saul get to the point where this is kind of hard and it's annoying and I'm frustrated by it. And also though, this is God's people. Mm-hmm. And God gets to do what he wants with his people, and he gets to appoint who he wants to his people. And even myself, like me, Saul, there were other people that were more qualified when I was chosen. And so how did he get to a place where he couldn't like ever reframe?
Yeah.
Like he lost sight of the big picture in the end. So it became about his ego and not what God wanted to do.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No,
so I'm like, I think people see it like, oh, if you feel insecure, if you feel any of these things, you're a bad leader. It's like, no, it's how do you respond to these things inside of you? And what is your timeline for how do you
dealing with it.
And then how do you, even though you still feel it, externally go about a different way? And I might be jumping ahead.
I think that's great. We will talk about, like how do you combat this?
Yeah.
And I think part of that is recognizing it and acknowledging it, that we all carry this. This is part of the human condition.
Yeah.
But I guess I never put Saul in an empathetic position of being like,
it's always the opposite. Yeah.
Of just kind of like, like it would be tough.
Yeah.
And then having panic attack. I mean, I guess having panic attacks that leads to throwing spears at somebody is pretty intense.
Not our time.
Like he needs a good therapist, but
yeah, seriously. But
yeah, I don't know if I empathize with him as much as when I read him, I'm like, oh crap, I see some of that in my heart sometimes.
For sure.
And then I'm like, I hope someone,
hope no one else sees that though.
Yeah.
So if insecurity, jealousy, and pride are kind of these like 3 deadly sins that sort of undermine our leadership from the inside out, where would you say the root cause of these kind of begins? Because I don't think you just one day wake up and you're full of pride. One day you wake up and you're insecure or you're jealous. These all are kind of like little seeds planted along the way that if not, pulled up from the root can really take place and grow a terrible garden inside of your soul, for lack of a better metaphor.
Yeah.
So if we were to identify these, maybe what's the root cause of each of these, or being so almost intertwined, what would you say you've seen maybe in your life, or just observing from characters in the Bible, or maybe other people you've worked under or with? Like, where would you see the roots of these 3 things sort of forming?
Yeah, I feel like it really starts like growing up, and the things people say to you that are like funny or little jokes or like little things that you just get over and over again, and you're like, oh, that's so, like, they didn't mean it, but then it like builds up into this like echo in your head of like who you are, your personality, like your dreams, the way you look, like it's like being a girl growing up, like people thinking they could comment on you, and you're like, oh, like, okay, is this true about me? And then like becomes like an echo, and then becomes like your truth, and then it becomes this like thing that you like can't surrender, and like you like can't get rid of in your head. Every time you look in the mirror, you're like, this is what people say about me, this is what I am. And it's like that's the like root of insecurity. And then like from insecurity, I feel like it goes insecurity, jealousy, and then pride, because like you're insecure about something, then you're jealous about like the things other people have, and then like you want to combat that with like, okay, I don't want people to think I'm jealous, so now I'm just gonna be like overly exuberant and be prideful about these things. And like then it's just like, instead of taking those like comments, being like, no, the world like is sinful, I can bring this to the Lord, and like I can hear what he has to say about me, like let those thoughts echo in your head louder than they should.
Yeah
No, that's so good. I was thinking, I mean, whenever I find that these things like creep up in me, it's usually because I haven't really gone to be by myself in a while with God. Because I do think when I do spend time with God, I can like recenter on my identity in him, that I'm a daughter of, I have a father in heaven. I'm different than this person. That doesn't mean worse. That doesn't mean better. I think I can organize things and almost feel like expanse in my mind of like, I don't know why in my mind that I have to be this way when God is infinite and a creator. And I can kind of logically get there. And then I'm not as much being ruled by like these little thoughts that you had said that just like pop up, like you're ugly. You're like, wait, where did that? What? Like that, you know, when you have like these intrusive thoughts where you're just like that person hated you, like that conversation went horribly, and you're like, wait, there were no cues to say that. And I think when I can get by myself, I'm like, okay, like let's organize, let's slow down a little bit, let's, and then sometimes I'll even. Like I had this process that I'll do sometimes where a thought will come in, and then I'll be like say the thought is like KP doesn't trust me, or something. And as a leader, and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I don't go off by myself, I'm like, okay, well, she did this thing, and now I'm looking for little cues that approve that thought.
You're looking for affirmation of
that to be
thought.
true. Okay, KP. Oh, she looked at me weird. She doesn't trust me. You're right. Oh, she wore the, she didn't wear the hat that I got. Whatever. It can get so weird.
I didn't like the hat. Okay.
Yes, and then
she didn't wear the bucket hat without the top on it
that I gave you, and I have an extra.
You did offer me one.
But when I hear that, and then I'm like, ooh, okay, well, interesting. And if I can go by myself and think, okay, are there any other moments in the past that KP's actions, nothing in my brain, showed that she didn't trust me? And I'm like, I can't think of one. I really can't. I can't think of really one. And so I'm like, well, we're talking 95%. It feels like KP trusts me as a leader, and then maybe a 2% one-off. And then I'm like, great,
I feel like
she
that's
trusts
a good
me.
percentage for me.
And so I think too, like I can go and analyze patterns and do that kind of work. But it's funny because we are so busy as a society. We're so fast. The way we rest is we scroll. Yeah. And I know I feel like it sounds so cliche. Rest and be with God will solve all your problems. But I think it will solve a lot of them.
Yeah.
Totally. And so I think the lack of identity is huge. And then not giving our brains and our hearts and our souls space to even like reason. Because I do think it happens in your mind in a lot of senses. Who am I? And does this thing I saw or felt in that moment fit what's logically actually happening in reality? I don't know. That's just something I've been working on lately is like, okay, if I'm feeling a little emotional and a thought has made me feel reactive, I need to go be by myself for a second.
Yeah. And we see like every conversation we have as like so selfish of like, we're not even talking about me. Maybe we're talking about you and just the way you're talking, the things you're saying. And I walk away from the conversation being like, oh, she kind of hates me. Like she was saying these things and it's like, it wasn't even about me.
Yes.
Like every conversation we walk away from, it's like about us and we're processing like how they feel about us. And it's like, it's not about you. Like you weren't even talking about you.
They were thinking about like their last meal.
Yeah. Like how they treat you can be from other things, not from because it's you.
Yeah, it's true. So identity, I think, lack of identity is the one I see in myself the most.
Big time. I see that in you too. No, I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding. Could you imagine? This is just a setup.
Connor brought us on here to just rip us. This is your performance review.
Yeah, seriously.
On the pod.
Seriously. I feel like the root cause of especially these big three, it all comes down to like a wound, I feel like.
Yeah.
When I think of my own life, when I like wrestle with insecurity, jealousy, it comes from like a fear of being overlooked. It comes from a fear of like, well, wait, is it what I bring to the table not enough for like what these people are looking for? And everybody's wound, I think, can manifest in different ways. I think for Saul, his started as insecurity because initially God was like, y'all don't need a king. You know what I mean? And God's like, normally this always goes bad. I'm your king. And they're like, no, give us a king. And he's like, well, I guess if you want one, take Saul. You know, and Saul's like, well, what the heck, dude? You know, I'm sure God was a lot more loving and kind than I just like framed him in. But I think a lot of this comes from a wound that we try to mask. And I think a lot of unhealthy leadership begins as a defense to not let yourself experience that kind of wounding again. Oh my gosh, I can't remember who I was reading. It was this book on like counseling, very new age and hippie. It's Jonah Hill's Counselor.
Yeah, you were telling me about this book.
It's amazing, not Christian at all, but the concepts are good.
Something with an S. No? Sorry, keep going.
I can't remember. There's a documentary on Netflix about this guy. Super interesting concept, but he talks about how a lot of his counseling is kind of like working through like defense mechanisms that we've put in place to like show strength in areas we've been wounded.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of insecurity, jealousy, and pride come from, well, I've been hurt by being overlooked. I'll never be overlooked again.
Yeah.
I've been hurt. Yeah. And so I think a lot of the root cause is a wound that we then, instead of letting heal and scar, we like, you can try to slap a Band-Aid on a bullet hole and pretend like we weren't shot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of this can, like, if you're a young adult and you're maybe trying to enter into a season of leadership or you just want to grow as a leader, I think one of the first things you can do, and again, we'll talk about this later, is like be honest and vulnerable about where you've been wounded.
That's good.
Because I think when we try to pretend like we haven't been wounded, or I think we try to pretend like we're just totally great, that's when you become, your like lack of self-awareness kicks in. And what's the phrase, like the emperor with no clothes? Like you become the emperor with no clothes. Like you're naked, but nobody's allowed to tell you you're naked because you'll fire them or throw a spear at them, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think so much of this comes from a root of like wounding, but it manifests in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to jealousy, insecurity, or pride, how have you seen this manifest in your own life, in your own leadership, or, and we'll leave this vague, this isn't like a roast of previous bosses or anything like that, but how have you just seen this play out in leadership, like through yourself or people you've worked for in the past or different things like that? How does this normally come up when it comes from like leading other people?
I can start with myself. Over the past we have interns here at the church, which is awesome and it's amazing. And then the shadow side of that is somebody's always watching you.
Yeah.
So you're like, I rock and I don't have any flaws. And then there's like somebody watching you do your job all the time. And you're like, oh gosh, it's almost like a mirror sometimes. Yeah. And you want to be a good leader, but then you can get like annoyed easily or whatever. And so I have this wound that I've discovered in my leadership. Like, I think too, God is so kind that I think the reason he calls us to work is to show us these wounds and because he wants to deal with them. And I think sometimes I'm like, leadership shouldn't be this way. And God's like, I love you too much to leave you where you're at. I'm going to sanctify you and make you into my likeness. And I'm like, dang it. Yeah. I didn't think this leadership role would make me have to wrestle with my wounds. I thought being a leader meant you didn't have any wounds. I thought being a leader meant no.
Yeah, you figured it out.
You figured it out. And I'm like, no, it means I'm in like the fiery furnace. And God is like gonna over his dead body, literally, let me not be free. And so I think sometimes we see it as bad, but I'm starting to see it as like, no, thank you, God. I want to be set free. And so I didn't realize I knew I had some like trust issues. But then I have an intern and I'm handing things to my intern to do, right? Delegating, trying to be a good leader that gives projects, gives assignments. And sometimes you have interns that it's their first job, they're learning, they're in their early 20s. And my standard is high, but when I am not stressed out, I found that I was really flexible with a mistake. I was like, oh, who cares? Like, it's pizza. Like, you forgot to order it or you didn't order enough. Not a big deal at all. But then I would find weeks where I'd be really stressed out and I'd feel there was a lot on my plate. And then sweet Brady, who's wonderful. This makes me look bad.
I just did Brady's wedding.
I know, he's delightful. And he could probably come on here and be like, I remember that. Because this one really haunts me. He didn't order, he forgot to order the pizza or like picked it up at for some reason, none of our volunteers had food. And I think I was hosting another youth pastor and I was preaching. And I had this moment where I was just like, I can't trust anyone around here. It was like, he was like, came up to me, was expecting like chill Casey, Mexico, like no worries, my man. And I looked at him and I was like, when I hand you things, I expect them not to drop. Like I felt me say this I heard Rick Mexico, like my dad. I was like, oh, it was this moment where I like had to look at myself in the mirror, like, who am I becoming? And I was so harsh, so heavy handed. I felt so betrayed by him. And I know that it pressed on this wound that like, I grew up and I had to do a lot of self-parenting. It just was the reality and had to depend on myself a lot and pull myself up. And it just was the reality of my family system. And I think in that moment, I was like, oh, someone I trusted like really let me down in a moment where I really needed them to not.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, my intern made a mistake with the food. Who cares? Like, it's not a big deal. But then what I responded with was, this person let me down and betrayed me and I can't trust anyone. And it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And so that was the collateral damage in that moment. Like the way I responded, I knew like the way I responded was not okay. And I later like apologized for how I responded and stuff, but I felt the collateral damage of like the wound and then my inability to like know that it was there and like react. Now I'll feel it. Like if something happens and then I'll be like, Casey, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Like no,
Yeah.
No one's trying to like drop anything, So that's one of mine. It's kind of embarrassing, but here we are. It's all for God's glory.
Yeah.
Don't mess up the pizza. Yeah.
No, I had an experience working somewhere where I had a boss who just, for whatever reason, like loved to crush your dreams. Like we would have like
your pride and joy.
People. We would have like these like one-on-one like performance review meetings, and it'd be like it would always end with like, so like what do you see yourself doing in the next 3 to 5 years, like and you say like, I don't see that for you, and it was
so bad.
And essentially the thought that I think it was coming from a place of insecurity of where like if your dream wasn't to work for them like the rest of their life, they were doing something wrong or something. Like they needed the affirmation of like, what could ever be better than this? You know, you know what I mean?
Yes, they're trying to like gatekeep you in there.
And so what that developed in me was I was like, I will never be a person who like holds another person back. And initially that can sound super noble, but it came from a place of insecurity because I was like, well, I know what it feels like to be crapped on. I know what it feels like to just have your hopes and dreams. Like your boss is asking you, what are your hopes and dreams? Yeah. You're like, I don't know. It got to a place where I literally was like, I don't dream about anything.
I love it here. I'll be here for the rest of my life.
I'm dreamless.
I'm really present.
But it got to a place where I was like, no, I'm going to champion like everybody. And that at first sounds super noble. But I was so frustrated with my boss. There was so much tension that I was like, I want to be a leader that people love to follow. And I'm going to do that by championing without challenging. Because I know what it's like to be challenged 24/7. Like when you do something bad, you're challenged for it. If you do something good, it's like, are you trying to outshine me and whatever? So I knew what it was like to work for a boss who interpreted everything as a challenge without ever being championed. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to champion and never really challenge. And then I remember one time I had a meeting with Milana. And I thought we were on like great terms. I was like, I just champion every dream she has. Like I'm freaking crushing it, like whatever. And she was really frustrated. And she was like, I don't know if you like me or you want me to be here or like whatever. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like I've like literally asked you like, like, what do you want to do and all this stuff. And she's like, well, you've never told me like, how can I improve? What can I do better? Like whatever. And to me, like, that was stifling or controlling. And so in a way I thought, okay, I was wounded in this way where I couldn't win. I couldn't do anything without my motives being in question or whatever. So I'm never going to challenge. I'm never going to push people to grow. And it really affected my leadership in a negative way. What I thought was noble and like championing people's dreams and never calling people higher and maybe tough conversations ended up really affecting my leadership in ways where people were like, well, I don't think you really care that much because you're never talking about how I can improve or whatever. And I was like, well, I'm just trying not to be an a-hole, you know, like,
you swung the complete opposite.
An astronomical jerk is what A stands for in that. But so like a wound that was created in me manifests in a way that, and this is where it can get so tricky. Like for me, that was championing others was from a complete place of insecurity. It might seem like only secure people champion others. But to me, it was, I need people to like me and like my leadership and know that I believe in them. So from an insecure place, I'm going to champion them and never challenge people. And I really don't think you can be a leader unless you know how to walk that line and do both. You have to challenge people. You have to call people higher. There has to be accountability because without accountability, there's no clarity in what you're trying to do. But you also have to leave space for people to grow and have opportunity from a sincere place and not from a place of, if I do this, will you like me and affirm me kind of thing. So I would say, and that's something that having that conversation with Milana gave me a lot of freedom to then have harder conversations with people because I thought I was being I don't know, like the funnest, best leader ever. And it was frustrating a ton of people on my team at that time because they were just like, dude, what do you care about? Like what, like you care about all of our things, but like you don't care about anything. Well, like, I actually do. I'm just leading from a place of like deep insecurity right now. Which
like you do such a good job at championing people, like working you the last year, but I never think that was, like you said, from a place of insecurity.
I hopefully have gotten it. It was about 2 or 3 years ago where I had that meeting and it really woke me up to be like, it's okay to have like loving confrontation. Like, you know what I mean?
Now
that actually
super intense.
I walk around and be like, not good enough.
180. He's got his pointer and everything.
KP, what about you?
Yeah.
You're younger.
What was the question?
Essentially, like, how have you seen one or all of these things like manifest in your leadership or when you're like working with people or whatever in your personal life, whatever?
coming from my background was landscape architecture, and that was hard, like comparison and insecurity of like, well, what am I good at? What are they good at? And like, there's so many different lanes within landscape. It's like everyone has their like strengths and weaknesses, which is so fun. Like when you are like working on a team and working on projects together, but then when you're like solo doing it, you're like comparing yourself so much to everyone else. So I feel like really I started comparison in that sense when we'd all pin up our projects and you'd like walk around and have to like critique everyone's. I was like, I'm dying.
Oh, that's
like,
a nightmare.
That's
anyone
horrible.
walks by my project, I'm like, you like it, right?
Oh, that's
you like
horrible.
it. And then I'd be like, but I want the critique. Like I want to grow and I want to learn. You just have to,
Yeah.
like you said, find that balance. And then working as like an intern here, then switching to a resident and having to like lead 3 interns, I was like, all my true colors showed. It was it was rough. I'd walk away from Thursdays being like, it happened. Did it happen well? Who's to say? And just like bringing it to the Lord constantly, being like micromanaging. I feel like, sorry guys, with the 3 interns, that was just my like biggest thing. And like, what can I do? What can they do? How can we as a team grow and build together was really like new for me, as like I've never led anyone. So I was like, okay, this is a lot harder than like I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Be like, it's just delegating. We're all having fun and doing tasks. I'm like, okay, no, there's some like flaws in me I need to like work through and bring to the Lord. And then I had a boss one time that this is the dumbest job ever, but I worked at a plant nursery at the cash register, and it was so fun. But at one point, some lady came to give a return. They're like, I want to return this plant, and I'm like, I actually don't know how to do that. Let me go ask. And I asked her, I was like, hey, can you teach me how to do a return? She's like, no, only like 2 people know how to do returns. And I'm like,
Let's make it 3.
I was like, it doesn't make sense. She's like, you haven't like worked your way up to do a return yet. And I'm like, a return on the cash register, I can do it. And I just realized she simply loved her, but she was working out with so much insecurity that there's only a set amount of things you can do as a cashier.
Yeah.
And she didn't want anyone to like reach her limit too fast or like exceed her limit. And that was like, I never want to be the leader that like doesn't teach and learn people because of my own pride and like my own insecurity of you not being like you being better than me one day. Like that, it really marked me. So
yeah.
That's I mean, good. That's real. As people who have all led in some capacity and as people who have all been led, when you lead out of a place of insecurity, jealousy, and pride, it doesn't just affect you, but it affects other people, the people that you lead.
Yeah.
I may be looking from a 30,000 foot view, reflecting on yourself or even biblical stories. If you don't get this in check, if you don't recognize it, and again, we're about to talk about how do you combat this? How do you deal with this? But what impact do you feel like leading from this place in an unhealthy, unchecked way? What can that have? What impact and effect can that have on your volunteers, your friends, your team, your staff, whatever that is? How can leading in an unchecked, prideful, insecure, jealous way affect people? How have you felt it affect yourself?
Yeah. Burnout for sure.
Yeah. Big time.
I micromanage. No one can do anything good enough. Can't trust anybody. This narrative becomes such like a victim. And now I'm this like leader who's a victim and my team's not blaming everybody else. Yeah. I did it in soccer too. I remember distinctly getting like ripped. I was the captain my senior year and I couldn't conceive of a reality that I was the problem. Like I remember being out there. I'm like, no, find my right foot. Like Jenny, like make the run. And I would be that player too. Not all the time. It just was a season where I wasn't scoring goals. So I wasn't having any output.
Yeah.
And I think I couldn't take that it maybe was me. And so I was just like being so aggressive. I was showing people I was frustrated with them. And my coaches pulled me aside and they're like, you have a week to change or you're not a captain anymore.
No way.
And in the meeting, I was like so tough. And then I like went and I like cried by the field for like a long time. But I was so burnt out too. I was like, I have to do defense. I have to do offense. So I think I kind of isolated myself, didn't have a team anymore, but that wasn't my fault. That was their fault for not being good enough. And then I took on everything and was burnt out. And then I blamed whoever was over me.
Yeah.
My coaches, right?
Yeah.
They're making bad decisions. They're this, that, the other. So I think that affected everybody. I mean, it took a lot of my teammates, breaches of trust. And then I was somebody that made them anxious, and then they didn't play good around me. So then it was fulfilling. My presence was anxious. My presence was demanding. And then the very thing I wanted out of them, which was to play well, to set me up for success, they couldn't even deliver because they were afraid to make mistakes, and then they did. They were crippled. So then I was the very player that I was, or leader, was getting the results that made me be that way in the first place. So it was just a cycle. So I think burnout was massive, and then I wasn't having fun. I wasn't playing free. And then I was like, well, what's the point of all this? I lost the why, like, massively. It's like, it's soccer, girl. Like, calm down, you know? So I think it was a lot of collateral damage. It made people feel insecure around me. It made people feel like they couldn't succeed. It was like the opposite of what a leader should do. Like, a good leader, you should walk into the space and they should, I think, bring out your best self. Acknowledge, champion, push, challenge because of potential, not because of their ego, you know, all those things. So I got ripped. I'm glad I got ripped. I think it was not easy for my coaches to like confront me as well. I remember they were like, we're doing this because we love you and this is really hard for us. And I was like, thank God for leaders that like do challenge when it comes to it. Cause I think I would have ended the season with a blind spot for sure. So that was like massively digressing. Burnout, turnover, all of it. Like divisive groups, like, isolation, all of it.
I think when I felt like everything that I did was being challenged and I never got championed, it kind of created, and again, so much of this was my character that needed to grow and develop. But with the team I was on, we all got equally criticized. It wasn't just like me. It was everybody on the team got their fair share of you're worthless.
Their final report.
But what happened was it created this work environment where we didn't trust the leader didn't trust us. Gossip ran rampant because it felt like almost one of our only ways of like rebelling against injustice. And you know, when you rebel against injustice with another injustice, it never ends well, you know? And then like I think burnout is probably the biggest thing, that when you lead from a place of wounding, it just burns other people out. They can't decipher what you want, what you need. You place so like an unspoken emotional weight on people that they can feel, but maybe they can't process. Like, what is this? You know, like why do I feel such a weight when I come in here to do my job? And it's because your boss is also looking for like personal affirmation, or for you to somehow like play a role in their like healing. And you're just like, I can't win. I can't do anything, you know? And it ended like, there was a season, and I'm not like proud of this, where I just kind of like clocked in and clocked out. I was like, if I do well, they think I'm trying to take their job. If I suck, I get my head ripped off. So like, what's the point of how do I just exist? Like, what is like a C, like an average student? Like, how am I a C student at my job so that I can like show up, say I'm doing it, not do too well to where I get in trouble, and not do too bad to where I get in trouble. And then you're just like, this sucks. I can't dream. I can't fail. Like, I can't fail because I'll just get ripped. And so when you lead from a place of insecurity, it creates a really hard environment for other people, not just to thrive, but to even want to be in. You can just sense it.
Gosh. I feel like the biggest thing that comes out is like just not being present and always thinking about yourself and what you're doing and what other people are thinking about you. And so you're like in your space, you're in your work, like especially this year, just like how I am, like, how can I be present in the lobby while thinking of the 12 things that maybe I like delegated, but I'm like not actually delegating them because I'm going to come back and check up on them and stuff. And so just being present with like your people at work, being present like in any like small group that you lead, like if you're like walking in being like, I'm nervous about the way I'm going to execute this, then you're not actually there for like the intent of like growing and discipling and being like there with people. And so just walking away from it at the end of the day, being like, I didn't really ask anyone how they were, or like I didn't actually do the real job that I was supposed to do, like and release like the responsibilities that like I prepared for and I worked hard for, and like walking into this space being like, okay, now I can like be here and do the real job that I'm supposed to be doing. Like walking away being like, oh, didn't know what anyone did today or like how anyone's doing today. And like that, I walked away a lot of nights being like, okay, I need to like shift my perspective of like, what's my purpose here?
Yeah.
And like what truly matters, like end all be all, what's the one thing that really matters here?
Yeah. It's like a side hustle managing your ego.
Yeah.
While you're trying to do like
through
the
your
thing.
job. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh
Literally.
gosh, the side hustle that doesn't pay.
Oh,
That's the
no.
book title, Connor. That's
There
it.
we go. Guys, if you're still listening to this, congratulations. We wanted to kick off the
Oh yeah.
podcast by, if you had to make $20,000 by January 1st of 2026, what would you do? This is a total side tangent. Send us your ideas on Instagram.
Yeah.
We're looking for side
Give
hustles.
you 1% royalty.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
give you $1,000 of the $20,000 we make off of your idea.
Yeah,
It seems
that's
pretty fair. Okay, so we've talked about identifying or defining the 3 kind of deadly sins of leadership. We talked about root causes, how this manifests in our own life, in our own leadership, what impact it can have on teams. I think let's spend the next 5 minutes kind of wrapping this up by talking about how do you combat this? If you're a young adult who wants to pursue leadership sometime in your life, or maybe you're in a current leadership role, whether that's middle management or you're entrepreneurial and you've started your own business or what have you, we are all susceptible at leading at any capacity of having these things flare up. So how do you combat this? I'm going to read 3 things really quick, and then I would love your all's commentary. I think the first thing you do is you recognize your wound. You acknowledge it. You don't try to hide it. You heal from it. You don't hide it. So recognize your wound, heal, don't hide, and then know that it's a journey and not a destination. I don't think you'll ever become a leader that never wrestles with pride or insecurity. It's, do you have a system in place to deal with this? So if you were advising somebody, how can they avoid the pitfalls of pride, insecurity, comparison, what have you, in their leadership? What would you tell somebody who's like, I want to be a leader, I am a leader, I want to grow from this? How do I make sure I don't hurt other people with my leadership?
Yeah. I'd say first and foremost, if you're a leader, it means that you're on a team.
Yeah.
And if you're on a team, leadership is immediately not about you. It's about the team. And I think that's like the first starting point. I think a lot of bad leaders will see like, well, this team exists to like make me feel like a good leader, that, this, and the other. And then also just the biblical example that Jesus sets, that Christian leaders are servant leaders. And if anything you're doing does not fall under the umbrella of like servant leadership, how am I serving this team? How am I serving this person? How am I washing their feet? How am I truly, like, I think the Bible can function as like your almost like your anchor, or even the thing you test things on. And so like, okay, I have an example. When I was at Arvada Youth, I had no leaders and I was praying hands and knees. I was like, God, please bring me leaders. Like, I have 200 students, no adults in the room besides me, and there's so many weird things happening. And God started to bring me leaders, and he brought me this one leader who honestly was amazing. His name's Daniel. He helps with YA right now. Incredible leader. Right off the bat, I looked at him in the eye, handshake. He asked me some of the most intense questions about my ministry that I didn't know the answer to. And I was like, oh, this guy could have my job. And in fact, this guy could be my boss. And in fact, this guy is the smartest guy in the room. And at first I felt threatened for sure. I was like, oh my gosh, he probably thinks this, that. I felt like I had to posture, perform, all of the things. And then he was like, what can I bring to the ministry? How can I make it better? And I was like, okay, he wants to make the ministry better. I was like, I'd be so stupid to not like ask this guy's advice, but I didn't really want to. And so I got on a Zoom call with him, and I was like, okay, what do you think? Thought he was going to give me like one tip. He like ripped apart in the most respectful way possible. No, not me. He's just like, this could happen. You know, he was excited about God's church. Yeah. He thought I was somebody who really wanted the feedback and like wasn't going to be hurt by it, you know? Yeah. And then I got off the meeting with like a huge document of all the things that need to be better. And I felt really threatened. But then I had this moment where I felt like God impressed upon my heart, I just gave you a gift. Are you going to see it as a threat? Yeah. Or are you going to see it as a gift? Yeah. And I was like, oh, God gave me like a star center forward, you know, like for my team. Like, holy crap, that's amazing. Am I going to implement this man's gifts? Am I going to use it because we're just stewards? I'm a servant leader. This is God's ministry. Or am I going to see him as a threat and sit him on the bench because it's not about me? It's about, you know, it doesn't make me feel good. Yeah. All that. and the other. And so for me, I think the only reason I would even have checked my own ego there is because I have a really robust understanding of who Jesus Christ is and how he led.
Yeah.
Truly. If I didn't have that understanding, I think I would have felt like, I don't know if I would have been able to check myself in the moment. So I'm always asking, like, would Jesus have done that? Would Jesus have handled it that way? And I know that sounds cheesy, but that really is my anchor for the moments like that, and how I check myself and come back to it. Did this look like what a servant leader would do, act, function? Probably not. Or maybe they would have felt that way, but they would have definitely not acted on that feeling. So that's kind of mine.
Yeah. I feel like for me, like seeking mentorship and people above me that I like value has been a huge thing in my life, and like asking questions and like seeking out advice in like certain situations of like how they would do things. And like in that comes like seeking the Lord, like taking time, like you said, like away, being quiet, like silencing yourself, making sure you can like really process and think, because like you said, it's like a wound and we like throw a band-aid over it, but like actually taking time to like sit in that. Mentorship. I had one more, but can't remember. Those are my two.
That's great.
Mentorship and time alone.
I would say, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but recognize your wound. Like, we all have wounds. We've all been wounded. And I think when we lead from a place of wounding, we lead defensively. I won't be hurt again. I won't allow myself to be seen as weak or vulnerable. And that creates this like cycle of abuse is a strong word, but abusive like leadership. And then heal, like do your best to heal. I remember I wrote this article one time about like leading from open wounds or leading from scars. Both like leave a mark, but how you choose to like, a scar teaches a lesson. Like an open wound bleeds all over people.
Wow.
You know,
that's good.
Yeah. And so choose to try to lead from a scar, and then just know, like I said, it's a journey. Like you have been wounded, and unfortunately you'll be wounded again. And so recognize it, heal from it, and then continue to like move forward. And
that's so good.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this podcast. Our goal in this podcast, as always, is to help you grow in your, you just laughed.
No, I did the clap.
That's
the clap.
No,
it's not.
KP.
I wanted it so bad.
Thank God this is your last time. No, I'm just kidding.
My first and
it's not.
The goal of this podcast is simply this: to help you guys on your young adult journey, whether it be in your spiritual relationship with Jesus, your relationships with one another's, your leadership, what have you. So hopefully, as you guys listen to this, there are some things that you can take away to help you grow as a leader, whether you are a leader of your friend group, a leader in your company, or you will be a leader one day. We hope that this has impacted you in a positive way. As always, if you found this podcast helpful, even though KP hits random buttons at random times,
this is my dream.
They're all going to hear this.
Boom.
This is all recorded. Okay. Even as she just totally dismantles the end of this podcast.
That's my absolute dream.
Share this with somebody. As always, come to Young Adults Thursday nights at our Lakewood campus, 7 p.m. And if you're in the Denver metro area, come on a weekend, Saturdays at 5, Sundays at 8, 10, and 12. We would love to see you there. Until next time.
Casey's going to wear a visor.
I will.
All right. And I'm going to a preschool graduation.
Bye.
See you later, guys. Bye.